Hi everyone. I really enjoyed meeting you this morning in RVC, and I am excited to take over this cohort and get you back on track so that you can complete your clinical practice successfully. So as promised, I think I will create a couple of videos, and the first one here is I'm just going to back up a little bit to Module 7 and break things down a little bit more for you in terms of what the expectations are. So for Activity 2 from that week, you should have gone through the standards for clinical practice and just at least get a brief overview of them to get you thinking about each standard. And ideally, that would have been for you to sign up for a standards presentation, having had the chance to get acclimated to them a little bit. What I have decided to do for the standards presentations for this cohort is you will not have to present a standard presentation. I am going to present the standards each week, and we will have a discussion, maybe use a different thinking routine so you get some exposure to different types of thinking routines in terms of how we frame our discussion. We might use some graphic organizers or something. It will be an interactive discussion, and your grade for your standards presentation on the platform will be based on your participation in the standards discussions rather than an individual standards presentation. So I think that is a more equitable way to address this situation, since this is a little bit unusual that you would have a change of instructor at this point. You know, already 3 weeks, we're going to be 3 weeks into clinical this week, and instead of trying to smash it all into the remaining weeks, I'm going to give you an overview of standards 1 and 2 and on the Google Classroom that I'm going to create for you, and then we'll pick up in the live VC with standard 3 next week, and I will present there then and moving forward for the standards presentation. Okay, so just so you're not like, hey, Carrie, well, what does that mean about my grade for the standard presentation? Because it is on the rubric. I'm just going to explain a little bit on how I'm going to address that. So this is the rubric for the case study and the standard presentation. So for the criteria for the standard presentation, which is right here, it says, did the candidate create an interactive student-centered lesson that they will use to lead a detailed discussion, blah, blah, blah. In where it says create, let's think about discuss and participate, okay? So if you are participating and, you know, attending the VCs and whatnot, as I present and we discuss, then you will be getting, you know, full credit for that part, okay? So I want to take that stress off of you, because at this point, there's, you know, I don't want to get you further behind or make you spin your wheels in any way. So that is how we're going to address the standards presentations for the remainder of the cohort. Okay, now we're going to take a look at the standards themselves. I will post a link to the standards directly into the Google Classroom, and you can find them on the platform as well, but I'll make it handy for you to have in a link on the Google Classroom, because you will be referring to these all the time. So this is what the document looks like. You may or may not have already looked at it, but just to give you a little overview, I'm going to just briefly touch on each of the standards. So standard 1 is learner development, and then so the part in blue is basically what you're going to first look at, and then you are going, the rubric is what you're going to be rated on for each, you know, depending on what lesson you have and what standard you're supposed to be focusing on for that lesson in the particular week. So for example, the first lesson video that you have is your baseline video, and that is focusing on standard 1, this one, learner development. So, how am I, and I'm going to explain it in my other video, go a little deeper into this standard, but, basically it is what it says. Learner development is how the teacher understands how their students learn and grow and develop, and creating access to learning, using their knowledge about learners' growth and things like that. You'll see that each of these 10 standards kind of follow a sequence, which I really, really like, from one to the next. So once you understand the learner development, then standard 2 is learning differences. So once you understand development, then you see how obviously each child is unique, each student is unique. So how are we understanding students' differences, students' different cultures, their communities that they live in, and differentiating for that and accommodating for that. Then standard 3 is learning environments. So now that I understand my students' development, now I understand their unique needs and a little bit how to meet their unique needs. What kind of a learning environment am I creating for them? So think about it's the physical space, it's the positive atmosphere, it's the way that you're creating engagement and learning and things like that. So your second video is going to be combining standards 1, 2, and 3, okay, for the second video. And then the fourth standard is content knowledge. So now that I understand my learner development, I understand a little bit about their unique needs and setting up a positive learning environment for them. Now, what do I know about the content that I'm teaching? So this standard speaks to that. How do I understand the content that I'm putting out to the students? And then standard 5 is, how am I applying that content? So think about the way that you connect different concepts, the way that you include different perspectives, engaging your students in critical thinking, 21st century skills, and things like that. So for your third video, you are going to have to show evidence of standards 4, content knowledge, and 5, application of content. Okay, those two combined. And for this particular lesson, we'll talk about this later in the BC, but I will just say here, you also will be creating a project-based learning activity for this lesson. Don't panic if you can't implement it. I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but just want to give you the heads up that you do have a PBL element on this third video. Okay, after standard 5, you have standard 6, which is assessment. How am I evaluating my students? After 6, 7 is planning for instruction. How, just like what it says, how do I plan? You're going to be using as you know, the Teach Now lesson plan template, and so that should be no problem to be able to, you've used it now throughout the program. We're going to look at how we are planning for rigorous learning and cross-disciplinary skills, etc. Standard 8 is instructional strategies. So what kind of activities am I having students do to develop a deeper understanding of the content and apply their knowledge in different ways? And then so your fourth video is going to be standards 6, assessment, 7, planning, and 8, instructional strategies all in one video. Okay, 6, 7, and 8 is your 4th video. And Standard 9 is when I love this week. Standard 9 is when we talk about professional learning and ethical practice. So we will talk a little bit about different ways that we can engage in the community, create a professional learning network with other teachers. It sounds like your cohort already has a great PLC just among all of you. We're going to talk about things like that. And then Standard 10 is leadership and collaboration. I do believe that every teacher is a leader, and so I also love this standard a lot because we talk about ways that you can take on different leadership roles within your particular learning environment. And you are going to have a leadership project a little bit later in the cohort, in the clinical practice, where you're going to demonstrate this standard. So you can see that, in your last video then, for all intents and purposes, will be showing all of the 10 standards, and you're going to say, well, wait a second, how am I going to show in a video Standard 9, or Standard 10? Think about what I talked about today with your baseline video and how you are doing the self-evaluation. It's all holistic. So it really, what I want you to think about right now is your baseline video is your jumping off point, where you're just kind of focusing on Standard 1 and getting your bearings with all the things that you have to do with the video itself, and the lesson plan and the mentor debrief and the reflection, all those pieces. For right now with your baseline, that's what you're focusing on. And then when we get to the end, your final video is just a video of any lesson, and you're going to just show and reflect on how you are meeting all of the standards. Not necessarily in that particular lesson, because you will be demonstrating a lot of these pieces, because I do feel that each standard, in any lesson, at least standards 1 through 8, you are showing in any lesson. In every single lesson, you're going to be thinking about learner development. You're going to be thinking about ways that you can meet students' individual needs. You're thinking about the learning environment you're creating. You're thinking about the content that you're teaching. You're thinking about how you're applying that content, right? You're thinking about how you're going to evaluate your students. You're thinking about how you're planning for your students, right? Before you walk in the classroom. You're thinking about the instructional strategies that you're using. So for those first 8 standards, you can pretty much show me any lesson and I can see elements of those standards. But the idea of your lesson videos is that you're honing in on each standard in a deeper way. So try to think of it in those terms. And then when you get to your final video, you're really, instead of thinking right now about, I'm going to be showing all of these standards, I want you to think about how you will have grown from your baseline to your final video, and you're going to kind of compare the two, right? From your baseline from your final, and reflect on how diving deeply into these standards you have been able to grow and develop your practice in a deeper way. Okay, so now that we've gone through the video lesson, the standards, and I explained a little bit about the videos, I'm just going to explain again that the 5 lessons are as follows. Lesson 1 is your baseline. It includes Standard 1. Lesson 2 includes Standards 1 through 3. Lesson 3 is Standards 4 and 5. And you do have the PBL in here, which we'll talk about later. And Lesson 4 is Standards 6 through 8, and Lesson 5 is all standards. But basically, again, think about the way that you have grown from your baseline to your final video. And we're going to reflect on that. Okay, so here's that other slide that I was telling you about the submission requirements. Please, please, please get out of your mind the worry about all of the annotating and re-annotating and doing things multiple times. You do not have to do that. Okay, basically this is what you have to submit for each of those lesson videos. You have the video recording. Ideally it will be edited between 15 to 20 minutes. And you have your lesson plan. You have your mentor debrief, which also should be edited down to 5 to 7 minutes, and your reflection. Okay? So I put a note here that you may choose to annotate your video or timestamp it, or you don't have to do either one of those. You can just, explain it in your reflection. Any of those three are fine with me, but you do not have to do all three. You can choose, okay? And the other thing I will say about the mentor debrief editing, I suggested that you get into a schedule with your mentor. I know your previous instructor, I heard her say that you don't have to meet every week. Technically you don't, but I think it's best practice to have a weekly meeting with your mentor, at least even a 10-minute check-in on the weeks you don't have videos, because that relationship is really what it's all about. The whole idea of having a mentor, yes, you're meeting the requirements for your teaching license, but also the idea is that you're developing a strong relationship with an experienced teacher. And I think that is really valuable. So when you meet with them, you may have a longer discussion. I typically meet with my mentees for about an hour, and we may only record the last 5 to 7 minutes. We may talk about other things, talk about life, talk about issues that are happening in the classroom, talk about career goals. It could be a whole number of things, and I don't need to hear all of that. So you can save the actual lesson evaluation and feedback to the end, and I'm fine with that. Okay? So I just wanted to mention that. Alright, so I promised you this wouldn't be a long video, and I'm already at 17 minutes, but I'm going to leave you with 2 other things for setting you up for clinical. Just remember that clinical is about the growth. You're going to get a lot of feedback from a lot of different stakeholders, and it's really not about getting the 4. It's about the feedback. That said, I understand that teachers are perfectionists, and I mentioned I'm a perfectionist myself, and I, as a student, always want to get a 4. You have the opportunity to resubmit your work and continually improve. I don't look at grading as I'm going to go in thinking I'm not going to give 4s. I don't operate that way. So please don't worry about what you have been told about rating yourself or being rated insufficient or basic and working your way up. That's not to say that I'm just going to, I'm not a grade inflator. I really do give quality feedback, and I'm going to grade you on what I see. And if I see that you really need a lot of support, just let's say, for example, or you miss the mark on something, or you're missing an element that's really going to impact your grade, then I will email you separately and give you the opportunity to fix it before I go in and grade it, okay? And the second piece, the pacing and the scheduling, I know we're going to try to avoid, we already have a delay with just where we are with being now in the 3rd week, but I think that the solution with the standards presentation will help alleviate some of that backup in where we are in the cohort, and we'll just, take it one step at a time, moving on from week 3, standard 3 next week, okay? And then the e-portfolio is just another thing I'm going to mention. You already started it earlier in your program. We are going to, towards the end, you're going to finish it, and it's going to be really awesome because you're going to put some of your lessons and showcase some of your work there and kind of tighten it up so you have it on your resume. So the last thing I'm going to say in this video is I really do believe that relationships should come before rigor, grace before grades, patience before programs, and love before lessons. This is by Dr. Brad Johnson. He's a wonderful teacher motivator. You can follow him on Twitter. And just think about this once you go into clinical practice. It's about the kids. It's about you becoming a wonderful teacher. You're already teaching. I think all of you already have some experience. You already are wonderful teachers, and you're doing this program to become better. And so just go in to clinical for this remainder with that mindset that, you know, it is all about those kids. So I hope that this helped you. I hope that it inspired you to keep moving forward, and just remember, I'm here for you.